Hello, everyone. I'm Jaden Strickland, and welcome to today's episode of the Jayden Bryce Show, the show where we talk about all the hottest topics in sports. It is officially the final week of the 2025-2026 NFL season. It's Super Bowl week. ESPN, SiriusXM, Fox Sports 1, everyone is currently in San Francisco taking in Radio Row for Super Bowl 60 with the Patriots and the Seahawks set to face off in the Super Bowl. Got a very exciting show. Today we're going to discuss the action from last night's Pro Bowl games, whatever you would love to call it. I'll give my interpretation on that. George Pickens and his contract extension. Obviously previewing the Super Bowl matchup between the Patriots and the Seahawks. Coaching hires. Everyone has been hired. I'm going to be giving my grade for each coaching hire specifically. And lastly, big blockbuster trade. Well, I would say blockbuster. That's a little too far-fetched. But James Harden was traded to the Cleveland Cavilers. Talk a little bit of basketball. Why not? To end off the show. That'll be the ending. But before we get into everything, make sure you guys like, subscribe, and everything else. Check out the podcast below. Links to Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And let's go ahead and hop right into it. So go ahead and I would say this is somewhat the headliner. This is what I mainly wanted to talk about. The reason why I haven't talked in a week, not much to really talk about. So I saved everything for this show. But last night's Pro Bowl games. Now, my hot take for the Pro Bowl, just based off last night, was it's got pretty embarrassing. We know that the Pro Bowl used to mean something, and we know the drama going on this year in the NFL with guys like Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders getting into the Pro Bowl. It was actually Joe Flacco's first one. Didn't know that. Obviously, it was Shedeur's first one because he was a rookie. I even found out roughly, what was it, Monday or Sunday, that Justin Fields was invited to the Pro Bowl. Like, it's just became an absolute joke. The NFL's had a rough couple of weeks with the Pro Bowl and the stuff going on with the Hall of Fame with Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, because Robert Kraft, as of Monday, if I remember correctly, is not going into the Hall of Fame. So it's been a rough couple of weeks for the NFL. And what happened last night was rough to watch. I don't know what happened to the dodgeball and all the other intermediate games that they did for the Pro Bowl. That wasn't even on display at all. I looked it up on the internet. I guess it was on NFL Plus Premium or something. You got to watch it for extra. Don't know. So they basically just showed the game, the Pro Bowl game last night. And I was sitting here, I even told myself, like, why are they even playing on Tuesday? I thought this was supposed to be a whole weekend thing, leading up to the next week of the Super Bowl. So they did it Super Bowl week. It was in San Francisco. I guess they're making it part of Super Bowl week now. I don't know. Obviously, they've made this flag football a big major component now because it's going to be part of the upcoming Olympic Games. And a lot of the NFL athletes are going to be able to participate in that event. So maybe I'm thinking that is part of the NFL's marketing ploy and the reason why they put the flag football game by itself and then up front and center at 8 p.m. And it was roughly a 3-hour game. But overall, man, it's just, what does the Pro Bowl come to? The same thing has happened with All-Star Weekend. I can say personally, I probably kind of still enjoy All-Star Weekend just a little bit more. Because football, when you think of football, what happened yesterday is not football. Like, it's not football. Now, obviously, it was, and I got to admit, it was kind of cool seeing these quarterbacks put their arms on display yesterday. Like, Jalen Hurts made one throw, a 40-yard bomb. They ended up getting picked, but it felt like that ball got there in like 2 seconds. He threw an absolute bomb, and Kyle Hamilton intercepted, but it was a 50-yard field, so a relatively short field. It amazed me the type of talent that was on display, just talent-wise yesterday. I mean, Jamar Chase was out there playing defensive back, better than probably any of the defensive backs that played for Cincinnati all season. And even Shedeur just out there making plays. I mean, it was pretty entertaining from that standpoint. You get to see the quarterbacks, big arms, skill position guys. It's fun and dandy, but when you just think of the football aspect of, like, we're here for the hits and just the smart aspect of football with the play calling and formations and the chess match when it comes to football, that's just not there with All-Star Weekend. And it's something that us fans really look forward to in any type of All-Star Weekend or Pro Bowl weekend. We want to see the best players compete against other best players. Like, could you imagine just with the starting lineup of the NFC and the AFC? Like, we want to see that in an actual football game with the pads on and everything. But with the injuries and the way that sports is trending, not only in the NFL, but also in the NBA, even the Major League Baseball, their All-Star Weekend is starting to be a joke itself. I really would not be surprised if All-Star Weekend or Pro Bowl, whatever you would like to call it respectfully for each league, would not be surprised if it is non-existent in the next 5 years. Really wouldn't. But, I mean, there's not much to take away from it. I didn't enjoy myself at all. I pretty much only watched it because I knew I wanted to talk about it and cover it and give my 2 cents to what I thought about it. But it was just a fun watch from just being able to see how athletically gifted these athletes are. That's pretty much what I enjoyed with the spectacular catches, CeeDee Lamb making plays, getting into the end zone, George Pickens making big plays, jumping up 10 feet in the air to catch a football. That one ball, that dime that Jared Goff had threw in the back of the end zone. Had a couple little funny moments with Micah Parsons trying to drive his scooter onto the field. And then he, at one point in the final play of the game, he was trying to actually get a snap in on offense, and the referees were being absolutely buttholes about that. Wouldn't even let him in because of safety reasons. Refereeing was a little bit questionable as well. I mean, flag football referees, who even cares? It's just at the end, it's underwhelming. It's super underwhelming. The days where you had the quarterbacks competing with each other for who had the longest, who threw the ball the farthest, the precision, accuracy, all that stuff. Even the wide receiver drills with who's got the best hands, spectacular catch, like all of that is non-existent in the Pro Bowl now. And it seems like they're making this flag football thing the main marketing ploy for the Pro Bowl. I don't know if that's smart. I really do not know if that's smart. I missed the Hawaii stuff. I can't even remember to date right now when's the last time they've been to Hawaii. But it really felt like it hasn't been the same since. Even when they were in Orlando for a couple years, it started to get to the point where they weren't tackling anymore, and rightfully so. I mean, when you're paying all these athletes $40 million, like you're literally scared that they're going to tear ACL. Like I was watching CeeDee Lamb yesterday. We're paying the guy $35 million, and he's just out there playing like he's trying to score with the pads on. He's doing all these special moves, and I'm sitting there like, CeeDee, calm down, bud. We need you next season. We don't need no ACLs or Achilles and none of that stuff. We got $35 million invested in you. But just that. It is what it is. It would not surprise me if many people did not tune into this just from a basic fan perspective. Obviously, people like me who are in the media and et cetera, we were going to consume this either way. But I really don't see a situation where many people, average fans, sat and watched that yesterday. It was a rough watch. I have to admit. But it is what it is. George Pickens took home the MVP, and the NFC took home the win. I guess that's something that we can all brag about there. George Pickens. There was an article that came out roughly on Monday that, as of right now, the Dallas Cowboys has not conducted any sort of contract negotiations at this point. Free agency is set to begin roughly on March 9th, March 11th, somewhere in that area. And pretty much, which option would you prefer to go with George Pickens? Because a lot of people are killing the Dallas Cowboys right now for not conducting any type of contract talk and this and this and that and the third. But me personally, I think the franchise tag is going to be the best option. You don't want to pull a Sam Darnold type situation with the Vikings where you just let the guy go for nothing. It's a short sample size, just like Sam Darnold. You got him for a year and you let him go. You don't want to do that because we see how successful Sam Darnold has been. Granted, we're dealing with two type of different individuals here. The reason why you're a little more skeptical of George Pickens is because of the personality. There's a couple of games this year with the Cowboys, specifically the one that we all remember, the Detroit Lions game, where it seemed like when the Cowboys needed George Pickens the most, when CeeDee Lamb got hurt with a concussion, it seemed like George Pickens just checked out. And we know that was the personality stuff was primarily part of his stint with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't get me wrong, the first year with the Dallas Cowboys, he was absolutely phenomenal. Made a Pro Bowl. He was a second-team All-Pro, if I remember correctly. 1,400 yards receiving, like his best season by far in his career. Like he was a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL this year. And outside of that one game with Detroit, there's probably one or two other games that you can count on one hand where you felt like George Pickens just caused you to lose the game. Maybe not even 3, maybe just 2 at the most. But definitely the main game was the Detroit Lions game. But the personality is going to continue to be the question mark. Because the way the salary cap is right now and the way the NFL is laid out in team building, look at the two teams who are currently in the Super Bowl. They're not paying their quarterbacks hefty contracts. They're not paying their wide receivers hefty contracts. Heck, look at the Seattle Seahawks. They paid DK Metcalf, and DK Metcalf was wanting to get paid. Pivoted off him, you draft Jackson Smith and Jigba, and now you're paying him rookie salary, and you're in the Super Bowl, and you only paid Sam Darnold $30 million. You have no hefty contracts on Seattle. Same thing goes for the Patriots. They have a lot of free cap space going into next season, and they're in the Super Bowl with a rookie quarterback. So the idea of paying two wide receivers $30+ million while paying your quarterback $60 million is a recipe for disaster. It is a recipe for disaster. I would not be in the business of paying George Pickens $35+ million a year. T. Higgins got 28. I would be clenching myself. Just really would. My butthole would be tight if I would give George Pickens $28 million. That's stretching it for me there. Just because you just can't. It's tough to be in the business of paying a wide receiver, two wide receivers at that. You're already paying CeeDee Lamb $34 million. It's tough to be in the business of paying another wide receiver that caliber of money while paying your quarterback $60 million and thinking that you're going to be able to field that money around to the roster elsewhere. We gotta think. They got rid of Micah Parsons because they couldn't pay Micah. Because Micah was wanting $40+ million. So I think the best idea and the best way to go about it is the franchise tag. See what he does. If he has a down year, fine. You can pivot off of him and draft the wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb's still your main guy. Or if he balls out, you're probably screwing yourself there because he's going to be worth more money. Because we know guys like Puka Nacua is fixing to get a payday this offseason. He's definitely about to be the highest paid wide receiver. The going rate right now is Jamar Chase, $40 million. Puka Nacua is getting around that number. Jackson Smith and Jigba, this is going to be the end of his third year. He was the best wide receiver this season. If he captures the Super Bowl, he's going to want his money this offseason too, going into his fourth year. He's probably ready to get his contract. And if Seattle was smart enough, they would probably go ahead and pay that contract. But the idea of paying George Pickens this type of money, granted, now if he was a guy like a Jackson Smith and Jigba with the personality in check, week in and week out, he's going to absolutely ball no matter what, I would probably think about it. Because the guy is beyond super, super, super talented player. But it is just a huge gamble. Huge gamble. When you have a personality like George Pickens and you're investing the next 4 or 5 years into this guy, I would be in the business of franchise tagging. Granted, franchise tag is roughly probably $23, $26 million per se. But I would definitely rather do that than pay George Pickens right now a long-term contract. That's just my personal opinion. Patriots Seahawks. Let's go ahead and preview the upcoming game in Super Bowl 60. I talked about it roughly just a little bit last week. We're going to talk about it today, and then on Friday, brand new show, we're going to pretty much give my predictions, my thoughts, what's going to happen, and my pick to win Super Bowl 60. But granted, off of my previous comments, y'all can pretty much get a drift on who I'm thinking is going to win the Super Bowl. But going into this game, which I have a problem with saying going into this game, but it feels like with this matchup, it is really, really, really hard to not see Seattle as the favorites. When you think about currently Drake May's injury, there's been reports that Drake May is having some issues with his shoulder, etc. When you think about that, when you think about the offensive woes, offense for New England has not played well all postseason. Granted, that has a lot to do because they faced 3 top 5 defenses in 3 straight games. You played the Chargers, you played the Broncos, and you played the Texans. Like 3 of those defenses, they're in the top 5 without a shadow of a doubt in the league this season. So you got to give them a little bit of grace when you think about it from that standpoint. But outside of that, it feels like Seattle's the better football team. Just quite frankly on paper. The defense across the board, I feel like is better, super talented. I think they got a better coach on the defensive standpoint of the football. And definitely offensively, I don't think it's close. I mean, you got the best wide receiver in the league with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think they might have the best, more than likely have the best running back with Kenneth Walker. You have, one can argue, probably the best quarterback because he's played the best this postseason. Granted, he hasn't had the type of competition in comparison to Drake May. But you kind of feel like you trust Sam Darnold going into this game just a little bit more than you trust Drake May. And the Seahawks offensive line is better. There's not really one unit I can definitively say is better than Seattle on the Patriots. I don't think it's the running back room. It may be the running back room as a whole because given you got Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson, both of them are pretty good quality backs. So maybe if you think about it from that standpoint. But I think the Seahawks had the better quarterback. I think the Seahawks had the better tight ends. I think they had the better offensive line. They definitely had the better skill position players when it pertains to wide receiver. Think about it from the defensive side of the ball. I think they have the better defensive line. I think they have the better linebackers, and I think they have the better secondary. That's just my personal opinion. Now, granted, I think the secondary position and the running back positions are they're kind of equal. Carlos Gonzalez, great player for the Patriots. He's pretty good. And obviously, they got Witherspoon and those other guys on Seattle. They're pretty stout on Seattle. So I think those position groups are pretty even. But from the grand scheme of things, it is without question that Seattle has the better team roster-wise. But the one thing that scares me, because if I were to rank what head coach I would believe in more going into this game, it's without a shadow of a doubt, Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel, for me, is the main catalyst, is the main ingredient, and the main component of why it gives me cause to pause to definitively say that the Seattle Seahawks are going to put a butt whooping on the Patriots just because of Mike Vrabel. Because I believe, in comparison to Mike McDonald, Mike Vrabel is the better head coach. That's the one thing I can say that the Patriots have going for them. I think coaching-wise, right now, the Patriots have the upper leg with coaching. That is a huge dynamic in any game. In any game, going into any game, obviously you want the quarterback-coach combo to be elite. But if you have the coaching aspect of your ball club, if you have the upper hand in that going into any type of playoff game, you feel good going into that game. You feel good going into Super Bowl 60 that Mike Vrabel is going to make the right decisions, push the right buttons, get his guys prepared for that game practice-wise throughout this week, and have them ready to play on Sunday. I truly believe that. I think Mike Vrabel he's established this team with toughness and grittiness. And that's the way that they've won games this postseason, and that's partially the way they've won games throughout the year. Granted, they've had a super easy schedule, et cetera, but Mike Vrabel has established a toughness and grittiness that really resides on the defensive side of the ball currently right now, to where I think this defense can have a hand on this offense and allow Drake May and that offense to make this game comparable and tight to where they may have a chance. That's the only thing giving me cause to pause. Now, I haven't looked at the line currently. I know it was at 4.5. I don't know if it's moved down to 3.5 or went up to 5.5. I don't quite know for sure. We'll discuss that later on Friday. But honestly and truthfully, it's the only thing giving me cause to pause to think that the Seahawks are going to blow out the Patriots. Now, I do see a situation where I think, and I feel with my heart of hearts, there is more of a possibility that a blowout is going to happen rather than a close game. I think the likelihood of a 31-17 victory is more likely going to happen rather than a 2020 game going into the final drive. Patriots or Seattle has the ball to win the game in the Super Bowl. I think that is less likely to happen rather than the Seahawks already up 2 touchdowns. The final drive for the Patriots don't even matter at that point. So I think that is more likely to happen than a tight ball game. But it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be more competitive than what people make it out to be, just because it's the Super Bowl. Who knows how Sam Darnold is going to play? Both of these teams are young. None of these teams really have playoffs experience on their rosters that I think of from the top of my head. Seattle definitely doesn't. They're super young across the board. I don't think any of those players, even the veterans, have even had any experience in the Super Bowl. And definitely the Patriots. Obviously, the coach has been to a Super Bowl, but the Drake Mays and the Henderson, like all these guys have not played at the biggest stage in Super Bowl. Outside of Milton Williams on the defensive line for the Patriots. He's the only player recently that I can think of from the top of my head because he won a Super Bowl last year with the Eagles. So it's going to be a good game. I'm looking forward to it, and we'll discuss that more on Friday. Now, exciting part. This is going to be super fun. I decided to grade every coaching hire so far in the NFL this season. So if I counted correctly, there were, 4, 8. There were 10 head coaching openings that needed to be filled. And I have 10 names here. And I'm going to go from top to bottom. These are not in chronological order grade-wise. I just kind of scattered them out everywhere. But I gave the most important ones that I really wanted to talk about, and I'm going to grade each one. So the first name we're going to come up with here is John Harbaugh getting hired by the Giants. I gave that an A hire. I think without a shadow of a doubt, John Harbaugh was the best available coach in this coaching cycle to me. I just gave it an A, though, because there's a lot of question marks. And there was one hire that I really, really liked more than this one. Just because of, it's actually the next name, but I'll explain further. But I think John Harbaugh, just from the experience-wise, out of all of these other guys, was the best available coach. And if you're the Giants, you've been absolutely putrid franchise for the last 10, 15 years. Since the last time you went to the Super Bowl, your franchise has just been a joke. But you got comparable pieces. You kind of found this element with Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterboo. You got Brian Burns, Malik Neighbors. Like, you got some pieces. The Giants, and you even got an offensive tackle. When healthy, is one of the best tackles in the league. So you got some pieces to work around. You've just been missing the culture. That's been the problem with the Giants. So you're getting that with John Harbaugh. And I think, without a shadow of doubt, this was a big move by the Giants. They needed it. They've been needing it for 10 plus years. So that's the reason why I gave this one an A. But the reason why it wasn't my favorite is because of Jesse Minter getting hired by the Baltimore Ravens. The reason why is this. We know that the Baltimore Ravens and that franchise, in comparison to the Steelers, has predicated itself on toughness and playing defense. When you think of the Baltimore Ravens, when you think of the Steelers, what do you think about? Defense. And that is what Jesse Minter is about. Under Jim Harbaugh, Jesse Minter, the last 2 years, even when at Michigan, when he was with John Harbaugh, the man knows how to coach some defense. He's had the best defenses in the NFL at every aspect in college, even now in the NFL. That unit this year was super good. And the only reason why in the playoff game, it was even close. Like, they were giving Drake May fits. And what has been a problem so far with the Ravens for the last couple of years, kind of been their defense. Their defense does not play that well. Granted, in 2023, they were pretty decent, but they didn't play like you would have expected them to play in that 2023 playoff game, AFC Championship, against the Kansas City Chiefs at home. But last year, they wasn't that good. And this year, specifically earlier on in the season, they were not good. And even statistically, they were one of the bottom-tier defenses in the NFL. So what do you do to answer that? You move off from John Harbaugh, who has been there for roughly 18 years. You get someone who is young, which is something that I wanted for the Steelers, which we'll talk about that hire. That's actually next. You get a guy that's young, brand new, fresh name, and I think it's an A+ hire. I thought it was an A+ hire. Now, am I more skeptical of it outlook-wise on who could be a better franchise, who would win a Super Bowl, what coach would bring a Super Bowl first outside of John Harbaugh or Jesse Minter? I would probably say John Harbaugh, just because of the experience, and I kind of already know what I got from John Harbaugh. But when you just think about it from taking the chance, and he's young, new, innovative, and that's the way the league has been pivoting. You're not seeing the Mike Tomlins and all these older coaches, even the Andy Reids. None of these guys are really having success in the postseason over the last couple of years outside of a coach like Andy Reid, because you have Patrick Mahomes. But But we've seen the Kyle Shanahans and the Sean McVays and even the Ben Johnsons this season. We've seen these young coaches seem like they're elevating their way towards being a top-tier status in the NFL coaching-wise. So that's the reason why I'm more high on the Jesse Minter hire, because it seems like it's following that trend. And I got to give credit to the Baltimore Ravens front office for doing that. But this is where we get to the Steelers with Mike McCarthy. I think this was a D hire. I do not understand. I do not understand it, and I did not understand it from when it happened. You got Mike Tomlin 2.0, just an offensive brand of it. What have we talked about with the Steelers? Just like we did a while ago with the Ravens. They're predicated on defense. I don't know if that's the Rooney family wanting to pivot away from that mantra, because the offense has been absolutely abysmal ever since Ben Roethlisberger has left. But I do not understand why you would move away from Mike Tomlin. Well, granted, they didn't. I keep forgetting this. They didn't move away from him per se. He left on his own power. But Mike Tomlin was feeling the pressure for the past couple of years of thinking that either they're going to fire me or I just need a new change of scenery. So if you're the Rooney family, you kind of got ready to prepare for this moment anyway, so in any way, form, or fashion. The writing's been on the wall forever. So your plan was to hire a guy in Mike McCarthy, who is pretty much the same coach you just had, but more of an offensive guy. And he hasn't won as much as Mike Tomlin. At least Mike Tomlin, he's had winning seasons every year. Mike McCarthy, yeah, he's had some winning seasons. He had 3 straight 12-win seasons for the Cowboys, but they were one and done each year in the playoffs. I think they won 1 playoff game in that time span. At least with Mike Tomlin, you know you have a shot that you're getting into playoffs every year. That's not the same thing with Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy had 2 losing seasons with Dallas. And you're getting an offensive head coach. And I've been on the record saying this for the last couple of years. I did not love Mike McCarthy's play calling. Granted, I know Mike McCarthy was the play caller when Dak had his stellar season. But Mike McCarthy, in comparison to the Ben Johnsons and all these other names, just an old scheme. And that's why I love the Jesse Minter hire. And I would have loved this hire for the Steelers. You're getting a young guy, innovative. The Steelers has got to come with the times. When you watch the offense, it's stale. They were out there running 3 tight end sets and slants, and there's no innovation, no adaptability. And they can't even get the quarterback position right. So maybe that's something that you're bringing in with Mike McCarthy, because he coached Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Dak Prescott, and I mean he gave Dak Prescott arguably his best season. Granted, I think the season that Dak Prescott just had was better than the previous one. But I just didn't love the hire. I think it was a D. I think it was one of the worst hires of the coaching cycle. And I just don't see, as a Steelers fan, even as a Steelers front office, you just feel super ecstatic about the idea of Mike McCarthy being your head coach. I just do not see it. Next is Robert Saleh to the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to give it a B+. Robert Saleh, to me, was one of the top 3, top 4 best available coaches, just in my opinion, just because of the phenomenal job he's done defensively as a defensive coach for the 49ers in his stint there. With what he was able to do this year with the lack of players and weapons at his disposal. He lost 2 All-Pro future Hall of Fame players. It was astonishing what him and Kyle Shanahan was able to do. And my Lord, he was the head coach for the Jets. He was the head coach for the New York Jets, a franchise that is cursed beyond imagination. So I'm not going to really take much from the coaching job that he did over there in New York. He didn't win while they were there, and they haven't won while he's been gone. So he gets fresh air. Mike Vrabel had some success here. Mike Vrabel was a defensive head coach, and so now is Robert Saleh. You got a young quarterback. You bring in a guy like Brian Daboll, who turned Josh Allen into the player that he is now. He's an MVP, future Hall of Famer, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You're bringing him on as the offensive coordinator. He's going to help your young quarterback in Cam Ward. You got some pieces here or there. So it's a good hire. They got a long shot to get this thing turned around in the division with the Jaguars, who seem to be ascending, and the Texans, they seem to be ascending as well. They got young talent on their team. You're in a tough division. But I think out of the availability of what type of head coaches were available, I think this was a pretty good hire, and I gave it a B+. Robert Saleh, I think he's going to do a pretty good job on the defense, and Brian Daboll is pretty much going to be the offensive coordinator, head coach of that offense. So I like the idea of Brian Daboll and Robert Saleh having their hand on the Tennessee Titans. And +2, I think Robert Saleh is a leader of men, and he would definitely get me motivated to play football. Jeff Hafley to the Dolphins, I gave this a C+. The thing about me with Jeff Hafley, I know Troy Aikman's been on the record. There's been a couple clips circulating for the last couple of days. Troy Aikman has been very high on Jeff Hafley. He talked about how at the time when he was interviewing for Sunday night, well, when Troy Aikman was doing the interviews, like the interviews, pregame interviews, interviewing the coaches and all these things going into the games for the games he was covering for the broadcast, he was bringing up names like Sean McVay's and the Ben Johnsons and all these guys where he told himself like he felt like these coaches were going to be head coaches one day. He said that he had that same type of feeling with Jeff Hafley. Now, granted, Jeff Hafley is a guy, I don't know much about him per se. I know he was at Boston College at one point because John Middlecoff wants to point this out a lot. I want to say he was the head coach at Boston College or something like that. I don't know. He gets out of there. He goes to be the defensive coordinator for the Packers. Pretty good roster. They were pretty successful. It's just for me, it's a C+ hire because you're hiring a defensive-minded head coach. When you're pivoting away from an offensive-minded head coach, I don't think the defense was the problem. I thought it was the offense. It's the quarterback. What are you going to do with Tua? I just think it's a C+ hire from the standpoint of how appealing is the job. Like I would not love the idea of being in that type of situation that the Dolphins are now. Are they going to? Is the reports have been coming out already that they're more than likely going to pivot away from Tyreek Hill. What are they going to do with Jalen Waddle? They were having trade talks with him just this season. Tua, he's the main question. What are you going to do with the quarterback? You need a quarterback. Is that going to be Malik Willis? Is he going to come down to Miami? I don't know. Like this team has holes everywhere that I don't even think Mike McDaniel could even done it. I think you could put Kyle Shanahan on the Dolphins, and it'd just be a tough situation. That franchise is a mess across the board. And I don't know if Jeff Hafley is the guy who's going to get that franchise back afloat. That's just my personal opinion on that. So I gave it a C+. Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons, B-. B-. The thing with me with Kevin Stefanski, I have a love-hate relationship with this guy. I think he's a bit overrated to me. I think the idea that he won two Coach of the Year trophies back-to-back, if I remember correctly, everybody's been pretty much astounded by that idea. They just love it. Every time they hear Kevin Stefanski, they're like, yeah, he was a 2-time Coach of the Year. But when you think about it from the grand scheme of things, the type of stuff that's been going on this season with the Shedeur Sanders stuff, I mean, he had Kenny Pickett ahead of Shedeur. He had Dylan Gabriel ahead of Shedeur. He didn't really want Shedeur. Like, I don't know. But I'm going to give Kevin Stefanski the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, it's a better situation than Cincinnati. It's not Cincinnati, but then Cleveland. Anything's better. Listen, the Browns and the Jets, they're just rough franchises. You really can't take much out of what a coach does. Guys, Bill Belichick coached the Browns, and he went on to win 6 Super Bowls. So we can't take much from the Browns. But we know offensively, you got Kyle Pitts, who is a free agent. They would be stupid not to bring him back after he just had a career year, his best year he's had in his career just this season. You have a guy in Bijan Robinson. He's astounding. Drake London, he's a stud at wide receiver. Your defense was actually very, very good this year. You got 2 edge rushers. They produced. I think that the defense was one of the pretty good units in the NFL. I think they were probably borderline top 10. Really decent unit. It's just your offense and your quarterback's been your question mark. And let's be honest, Kevin Stefanski took Joe Flacco to the playoffs. I mean, that's Coach of the Year type material. So if he was able to do that with that roster that Cleveland had with Joe Flacco at the quarterback position, I think with this roster here, with either Michael Penix or Kirk Cousins, who knows what they're going to do at the quarterback position. That's been the focal point so far on ESPN this week for some odd reason today. They were talking a lot about Michael Penix because I think Matt Ryan, now that he's over football operations there, he's pretty much kicked everybody out the door, and he's already saying that he's not committing to Michael Penix, which I think is a good idea. So who knows what they're going to do there. But I like it for long term. I trust Matt Ryan and his process, and he was really on board with Kevin Stefanski. So I'm going to that's why I give it a B+. Another B+ is Joe Brady. I know I originally said that I didn't like the hire just because I thought that Sean McDermott, if you were the Bills, I'm not comfortable saying that we got a significantly better coach with Joe Brady rather than Sean McDermott. I just don't think there's that drastic of a difference there. You can argue I think Sean McDermott could still be a better head coach right now at this present time than Joe Brady. But you felt like you needed a change. You weren't getting over the hump, and I'm fine with that. But from the grand scheme of things, when we think about obviously at the time when they made this move with the coaches that were actually available, because the Robert Sala's, Jesse Mentors, Mike McCarthy's, and the John, like all these guys were already hired. So you decided to go with Joe Brady. You took your offensive coordinator, you were interviewing Phillip Rivers and everyone else for this job, even Brian Daboll, and you just decided to just promote Joe Brady to the head coaching position. Now, I don't 100% hate it. I just really, I thought it was malpractice to sit here and make a decision. Now, if they would have moved off of Sean McDermott and a guy like John Harbaugh or Jesse Mentor or somebody like that was available, I'd have been more on board with the moving on for Sean McDermott. But I've really got a sour taste right now for that front office with Pagula, the owner, and Brandon Beane, the GM. That whole fiasco they had with Keon Coleman and throwing him under the bus with the lies saying that the owner saying that Brandon Beane didn't want Keon Coleman, but yet there were clips surfacing about him literally stating that he wanted Keon Coleman, and they pretty much fired Sean McDermott for going and telling them that they didn't have a Super Bowl roster, and Sean McDermott was right. Every syllable he uttered, I mean, we only got a little small idea of what he said, and that probably was paraphrasing. But gosh darn it, was Sean McDermott not wrong? That roster was not good enough to win a Super Bowl. It just wasn't. I even argued it last week when I talked about Joe Brady and even the Bills getting eliminated. I said, guys, the Bills had, out of the 14 teams, probably one of the worst rosters in this playoff, without a shadow of a doubt. But Joe Brady, pretty good offensive mind. He's smart. I'm pretty sure, even though they said Josh Allen didn't have full say in it, I know Josh Allen had his handprints a little bit on this hire. So who knows? Does this hire, is this going to get them over the top? I don't really think so, because I think it was still stupid to move on from Joe Brady. Todd Monken getting hired by the Cleveland Browns. This was one of the worst hires for me. Granted, there wasn't many head coaches out there to choose from, like I previously said, but Todd Monken, they were interviewing Jim Schwartz at the time, and Jim Schwartz felt like he had the job, and there's a whole lot of drama going on there. Who knows if he's going to be back as a defensive coordinator, even though the Browns players and everyone wants him back. I don't know how that's going. But Todd Monken, he was the offense coordinator at Georgia when they won all the natties, and then he moved on to get Lamar Jackson. He won an MVP under Lamar Jackson. Well, he helped Lamar Jackson win the MVP, and I think he about had Lamar Jackson win 2 MVPs, if I remember correctly. But I don't know. This hire to me is just a little bit underwhelming. Todd Monken, when you think of that hire, just nothing wows you. Like, what is this guy's track record? What makes you really believe that this guy is going to be a leader of men and things of that nature? I think he's calling plays, if I remember correctly. I don't quite know for sure, but I want to think that he's calling plays offensively. He's already came out in the press conference roughly Monday or Tuesday and already said that he's not committing to Shedeur Sanders. So you got that whole flip-flop. But the thing that's really confident with me with the Browns, I think they have a good roster. I think the GM, he nailed this previous draft, so I think he's pretty good. They just got to get the quarterback right. You got to get the quarterback right. I think the defense is really good. You got a guy in Myles Garrett who is already a Hall of Fame caliber player, Denzel Ward, Pro Bowl, All-Pro player. You already hit on a linebacker, rookie, pretty good. Just offensively, you just need to revamp that whole thing. You used to have one of the best offensive lines in the league. Now it's not that good. Can't protect the quarterback. You don't have any good wide receivers. Your best wide receiver is Jerry Jeudy. You just got a lot going on. That's the reason why they're mocking Carnell Tate, wide receiver from Ohio State, to the Browns. So Todd Monken's got a lot of work to do in order to flip that franchise around. But the good thing you really say, though, is that division is just bad right now at the moment. It was probably one of the worst divisions in football just this season, with the Ravens and the Steelers and the Bengals. So that's probably gives you more comfort. Clint Kubiak, he is not officially the head coach of the Raiders, but he's reportedly supposed to take the Raiders job after the conclusion of the Super Bowl. I think this is a B-plus hire. You're the Raiders. It is probably crazy to say because you're sitting here like, well, what's the main difference between the Raiders and the Browns and the Jets? The thing with the Raiders is this. It seems like they're formulating a plan. You already got a guy in Brock Bowers. He's a stud. Should be a stud if you get the offensive line right, Nash and Genty. You have that. So you're fixing to get your quarterback. They're going to draft Mendoza with the number 1 pick. Everybody's super high on this guy. And the reason why I am on board with anything that happens with Clint Kubiak and whatever decision that this franchise makes is because of Tom Brady. And Tom Brady we trust. Tom Brady is having his fingerprints on this hire. He has it on this hire. He's had it on this whole process. He's going to draft Mendoza. He was at the national championship game. That's the reason why I'm comfortable with this pick. Now, granted, I like Clint Kubiak's resume. He's done a phenomenal job this year with Seattle in that offense. He's pretty much elevated Jackson Smith and Jigba to the player he's been. He sets him up in great route scheme and things of that nature. Great run game. I love his play calling in that nature. Even in 2023, when he was the OC for the Niners, obviously Kyle Shanahan was calling plays, but he's under Kyle Shanahan's coaching tree. That in itself is just an A+ hire. I'm Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, anything. If you're in that coaching tree, 9 times out of 10, these guys work. I mean, look at Sean McVay's coaching tree. These guys are phenomenal coaches. So that's the reason why I'm super on board with Clint Kubiak. I think moving on, I think even hiring Pete Carroll to begin with was idiotic. Pete Carroll has definitely lost his fastball. We saw it in the last couple years in Seattle. Like, he just didn't have it anymore. He just needs to sit at home and go golf with the guys. That's all he needs to do. He's still young and able to get his exercise. If he wants to go throw some football, wherever he's staying at now, if he's in California or if he's in Seattle or if he's in LA, wherever he resides right now, if you want to go to these teams and play catch with the boys like the good old days, do that at your own will. I'm sure the owners, respectfully, wherever you're at, they will gladly allow you to do so. But just stay at home and play some golf. But Clint Kubiak, I think, is a B+ hire. Last but not least, the worst hire probably out of this whole coaching cycle was Mike LaFleur. The Arizona Cardinals hired Mike LaFleur. This felt like just whatever. This is the scraps. This was our last resort. A guy like Brian Flores didn't get a coaching job, didn't get a look. I don't know if you're the Cardinals why you don't give him a look. Maybe because you already went the defensive coach route with Jonathan Gannon and it didn't work out. That's probably why I'm guessing that. But he's the brother of Mike LaFleur, Matt LaFleur. Sorry, excuse me. But I don't know. He was the OC for the Jets. Pretty underwhelming hire. Not many people are very fond across the media with this hire, me including. So there's not really much to say. I mean, you're going to move off the quarterback, Kyler Murray. He's getting traded away. Old roster to a certain degree. I just don't know. I don't see where anything gets better, especially in the division with Seattle, the Rams, and the Niners. Like, I could definitely care less whatever the Cardinals has got going on. So good luck to Mike LaFleur. I wish him the best. But yeah, that was probably the worst hire. And now we're going to move it on to some NBA, and we're going to end it off with this. James Harden was officially traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is going to be his 6th team in his career. But they traded him for Darius Garland. Now, granted, I don't watch the NBA on a night-on-night basis. But I do know James Harden because I grew up watching him as a kid. And I know Darius Garland to a degree because I know his resume. And even I knew he played in the All-Star game last year. And I know I've pulled up the stats. I've done my research to be able to talk about this. But my main thought just came to this. Because I know basketball enough to know this. I'll never understand GM's fascination with James Harden. I do not, and I will not, for the life of me, understand why teams keep investing in this guy. He is known for being a choke artist, uninterested at times, and bipolar. And I say that because of the whole Daryl Morey situation with the Sixers. He had the whole situation like, yeah, I love Daryl Morey, and then goes to China and just talks junk about Daryl Morey, and that's the reason why ultimately that relationship soured and he headed to the Clippers. But what is this player known for? Being a choke artist. And the reason why I question this move, because from what articles are saying, they made this move, Cleveland did, because they want to get over the hump and compete in the East and win a championship. And Darius Garland is a guy, he hasn't been available. He's been hurt with a foot injury, yada, yada, yada. I get it. But why James Harden? I would have been more on board with a guy like a Kobe White or somebody like that. I mean, James Harden? Now, granted, James Harden, he's playing really well this season. He's averaging 25 and 8. Garland, in the 26 games he's played, he's averaging 18 and 6. I get it. I get, obviously, guys like Kobe White and all these rotational players that you can get in comparison to James Harden. We're talking about a guy in James Harden who is going to be, he's a member of the top 75 players in the history of the NBA. He's going to be a Hall of Famer first ballot without a shadow of a doubt. He's one of the best players to ever touch basketball. I get it. But you said you wanted to win championships. Why is this guy not done in his career yet? Won championships because he does not show up in the playoffs when he needs to show up the most. It's why he is. Yes, he shows up in game 1 and game 2. But since he's been with the Thunder, and when he went to the Rockets, and then when he went to the Nets, and then when he went to the Sixers, and then when he went to the Clippers, and now the Cavaliers, well, granted, he's not been on the Cavaliers yet. But every team that he's been with, what has been the main component? He does not show up in the games that you needed him to show up in order to win that game. There was a great graphic that came out on FS1 earlier while I was watching. The amount of games that superstars, they were comparing Kevin Durant, LeBron, Steph Curry, and Harden. In a game where those guys scored under 5 baskets, between KD, LeBron, and Steph, there were only like under 5 games that's happened, that they scored under 5 field goals in a playoff game. Guys, I want you to know that James Harden's number was in the 30s. The 30s. To where there's been 30-plus playoff games where he scores less than 5 baskets. We're talking about a guy, James Harden, top 75 player, future Hall of Famer. That's who we're talking about here. And if you're Cleveland, you know this already. We've seen it with the Houston Rockets. They did all these moves. They got Russell Wilson, got Chris Paul. Still couldn't get over the hump with James Harden. What happens? James Harden wants out. He gets fat. Then he goes to Brooklyn. His excuse was he tore his hamstrings, whatever it was. Couldn't help KD out. KD out there dropping 50 in overtime and still can't get a win because James Harden can't even score. What happens when he moves to the Sixers? Joel Embiid, that whole group. Oh, nah, still not good enough. Because James Harden don't show up. He only wants to score 7 points. What about the Clippers? I think in game 6 or game 7 they had a couple years ago, even last year. I think it was last year. He scored like 7 points in elimination games. Couldn't help Kawhi out. This is who this guy is. So when Donovan Mitchell, who has played pretty well in his playoff career, he's going to end up scoring 40 in the playoffs this year. And James Harden, who you got to elevate yourself to propel you to winning championships, there's going to be a game, and when you need him in a closeout game, game 6, game 7, where James Harden, excuse me, I was looking at my phone. I got to be somewhere in the next 10 minutes. But you want to make, there's going to be a game where James Harden's not going to show up. He is going to be the reason why you lose the game. Donovan Mitchell's going to score 40, and you're going to need James Harden when you need him the most, and he's not going to show up. He has not changed in the 16, 17, 18 years he's been a pro. It's been the same story. What makes you think that anything's going to change? At least if you're Cleveland, you got a guy in Darius Garland. Look, he made an all-star. He made an all-star team last year. Like, this is a guy who we've seen has a capability of playing at a pretty high level, and he's young. He's only 26 years old, I think I look as old as he is. So he's young. And you have the capability to still continue to, what's the word I'm looking for here? Develop that player. But instead of you trading like another key piece, not a superstar caliber player, but just instead of trading for like a guy like Kobe White, who could, a good point guard who's good enough to elevate himself when he can, a role player, you go ahead and get rid of a guy like Garland, and you invest in James Harden, who is 36 years old, probably got not even maybe 4 more good years in the NBA, and you think that move is going to propel you to winning in the East. I just don't see it. I thought this was an idiotic move. Historically, a relationship with Harden is just an absolute disaster. It is a disaster, and I do not see the situation changing. If I'm wrong, God, I'm wrong, but still, I just do not see a scenario where this works out in a positive way. I just don't see it. That's just me personally. And obviously, there's always drama revolving James Harden with two different sides of the story. There was an article that Shams came out with yesterday that stated that James Harden requested a trade, and now as of this morning, there was an article that somebody had written that James Harden didn't want out. He loved the head coaches and this, and that, and wanted to stay. So I don't know. Even Kawhi even answered to the question about him requesting a trade. I don't get it. I'm over James Harden. I have been for years. He is what he is, and nothing is going to change. So that's why I think about that. He's a good player. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He was great in his prime. And he's averaging 25 and 8. He's part of the reason why the Clippers has pretty much flipped their season over in this going into the second half of the season leading to the All-Star break. I just didn't love this move. No way, form, or fashion. But that was a little long. I'm going to get ahead and get out of here. I hope you all enjoyed. I will be back with you all the weekend on Friday or Saturday, and I'm going to submit my final thoughts leading up to Super Bowl 60. Might talk some Duke Carolina. Got a big Duke Carolina matchup in basketball. It's that time of the year. Get leading into March Madness. Might talk about that a little bit too. I also may have a special guest in the next coming weeks, and we're going to talk about the Super Bowl and maybe even some Duke and Carolina as well. So I love you all, and I'll see you then. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the media for the Super Bowl, and I'll be back with you all soon. Love you. Bye.